Welcome members, officers, honorary alderpersons and any members of the public viewing at home to this evening's council meeting. Please be seated. There is no fire drill planned for this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, please make your way from the chamber using either the fire escape to my right or via the stairwell off from the lobby outside the chamber. Please can I also ask you to ensure your mobile phones are switched off or on silent. Thank you. Apologies for absence. May I have Ms Willis? May I have them, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've received apologies from Councillor Sashi Marvagnam, Councillor Liz Noble, Councillor Jonathan Quinn, Councillor John Skipper, Councillor Pat Tedder, Councillor David Whitcroft and Councillor Helen Whitcroft. And Councillor Leanne McIntyre is joining virtually and Councillor Gordon and I have been advised may be delayed.
Moving on to agenda item 2.
Sorry, Mayor, can I just offer the apologies for Councillor Parrott, who's running late.
Moving on to agenda item 2, I propose that the minutes of the meeting of the council held on 16th of July 2025 be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second that motion.
Is that agreed, members? Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do I have any members that have any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest to declare in relation to the matters which are to be considered at this meeting? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. It's in relation to item 9 on the agenda. I'm a parish councillor on Windlesham Parish Council, but I come to it with an open mind. Thank you.
Who was first?
Can I just say that I've also got a business in Windlesham as well, just for clarity on that.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Just to say, I'm also a Windlesham Parish Councillor and as Councillor Wilson come to this meeting with an open mind.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor White.
I'd also like to declare that I'm a Windlesham Parish Councillor, also Chairman of the Parish Council, but come to this meeting with an open mind.
Agenda item 4. I am advised that 3 questions have been received from members of the public under Council Procedure Rule 10. Question 1. Mr Murphy, would you like to come to the microphone and read out your first question? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you agree the CGR must consider that our representative democracy depends on engagement with the community being served by those elected to represent it? Community is defined by its residents arising from the human need to belong. It cannot be imposed, but can be created. The three villages combination called Windlesham Parish Council was imposed by the 1974 LGR, an anomaly then and remains an anomaly now within SHBC and the wider region. It is outsized in scale, 18 councillors and associated bureaucracy, not conducive to the nimble decision-making necessary, and by any measure, the absence of real engagement. Failing to recognise and consider the individual communities is the cause of historic distrust and inability to accept dissent, a key element of democracy, led inevitably to the CGR request. I strongly support the benefit of cooperation between individual parish councils by consent of the willing, including Windlesham Village. Thank you, Mayor. I have a supplementary, if you'll allow.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I have been advised that the leader of the council, Councillor Sean McDonald, will respond to this question, and then we'll come to a supplementary question.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Murphy. We correspond periodically, so delightful to see you. I'm actually going to go a bit rogue on the answer that was prepared, because having had the time to read your specific question, and it's not for me to comment on the second part, which does relate to the answer that's been provided. With respect to your specific question, which was, do you agree the CGR must consider that representative democracy depends on engagement with the community being served by those elected to represent it? The answer is yes.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Mr. Murphy, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you, Mayor. Do you agree that the results from the initial consultation demonstrate lack of engagement with the electorate and in WPC, the limitations imposed on our elected representatives following the CGR request? The response levels say more about the survey quality than the results. There was an unreasonable expectation of public awareness, and without selectivity for representation, there will be bias in the responses. This factor makes management of the data at risk of that bias. I'm concerned about the use of words like low response and limited being used without relativity, and favourable comments made on percentages of very low responses. By selected use of the data, I can say that responses of 0.1% of unparished and 0.4% of parished in terms of data evaluation have little value. But the 53.1% of those from Windlesham and 60.8% of those from Bagshot favouring independent village PCs does have value. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. May I ask Councillor MacDonald to respond?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your follow-up question. We would like to see as many people have engaged already in this process. Clearly, as you highlight, it has been a bit of a mixed bag, which I'm sure will be commented on later in the debate that follows. We have sought through this process to take it step by step and to manage the cost and exposure to the council in taking that approach. So I think it's best if we wait for the further debate that follows, where these matters will be considered further. But thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, and thank you, Mr. Murphy, for your question. Question 2. The second and the third questions are from Paula Harrington, who is unable to attend the meeting in person Please can I ask an officer to read out Mrs Harrington's first question? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Paula Harrington has asked the following question. The report acknowledges that the majority of responses to the survey came from Windlesham, and the majority of those responses expressed a desire for disaggregation of the parish. It then goes on to state, once the responses were examined, it was considered that some views were based on inaccurate assumptions, whilst others could be addressed other than by disaggregation. Would Surrey Heath Borough Council explain what evidence it has for such a subjective opinion that the responses were based on anything other than strongly held views? It is acknowledged that Windlesham returned a significant number of responses. You're aware that the 2019 Community Governance Review supported disaggregation, although it was not implemented, and that there is an outstanding Community Governance Review request from 2024, which also sought disaggregation. The people of Windlesham have made their views clear. Will Surrey Heath Borough Council now respond by resolving to take disaggregation of the existing parish to the next consultation stage?
Thank you for that question. I've been advised that Councillor MacDonald will respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Ms Harrington, for your question. As been alluded to, we do have a debate to follow, so I don't wish to prejudice those discussions that will take place on item 9 on the council agenda this evening, and therefore, regrettably, I cannot answer this question at this time.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Question 3, can you please read out Mrs Harrington's second question? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second question from Paula Harrington is, your recent survey did not make any reference to the outstanding Community Governance Review request dating from 2024, which the Council resolved to defer a response to in February 2025. Surely it would have made financial and administrative sense to deal with this Community Governance Review request, which seeks a separate parish council for Windlesham as part of the wider Borough Community Governance Review.
Thank you. I've been advised that the leader will respond to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to admit my memory is increasingly fuzzy on things in the past, but I seem to remember that it wasn't accepted that it was a formal CGR request in 2024. It was treated as an informal engagement session with residents, which we were mindful of. When the landscape then changed due to LGR, we took note of that. And again, consistent with what I said previously, we tried to minimise the cost and risk exposure to the council by including the review and the outcomes of that informal engagement session with residents as part of the wider CGR process. We deferred that in February, and we then followed it up with a decision in July, where the formal process kicked off across the whole borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, for that, and thank you very much to Mrs Harrington for your questions. Agenda item 5, my announcements. Firstly, I start with 2 sad announcements for the Council. I am sorry to inform you that former Borough Councillor and serving County Councillor David Lewis died in August. David was a Borough Councillor between 2015 and 2023, representing Watchetts Ward during this time. He was a member of the Executive in 2020 to 21. On behalf of the Council, I send our condolences and prayers for his family. I am also sorry to announce the passing of former Councillor Stuart Stevenson. Stuart represented Bisley Ward between 1999 and 2011. He was Mayor in 2005 to 2006, having been Deputy Mayor the previous year. He had also been a member of the Executive and chaired the Planning Applications Committee. I also extend the Council's condolences to Stuart's family and friends. Now, moving on to much happier news, I would like to add the Council's congratulations to our free woman, Alex Matthews, and her teammates for their success at the Women's Rugby World Cup last month. You'll be aware that Alex grew up in Watchetts and played at Camberley Rugby Club. We are delighted for her second World Cup win. Moving on to my other announcements. It seems hardly possible that I'm already approaching the halfway point of my mayoral year and my feet haven't touched the ground. There are too many remarkable visits for me to mention, and I have thoroughly enjoyed them all. A couple spring to mind, which I would like to share with you all. The Deputy Mayor and I were invited to spend the day at the Mubarak Mosque in Tilford, where we had a very enjoyable and informative visit. I am aware that you have also received, all councillors have received a personal invitation from the mosque, and I would encourage you to visit if it is at all possible. It was an absolute pleasure to be invited back to Lightwater School for the amalgamation of the infant and junior schools. It was a delight to hear the children sing the new school song and to chat with them about the role of the Mayor and the Council. Earlier this summer, I attended Bazaars, where I met a number of our local Scout and Guide packs, where I invited them to see what we do at the Council. We hosted the first of our series of afternoon teas with the Camberley Rainbows, where they were shown the Mayor's Parlour, Members' Lounge and the Council Chamber. They enjoyed homemade refreshments and took part in a treasure hunt around the Council offices. I'm looking forward to the Beavers joining us for a similar event next month. And I think we've just had another invitation today, so they'll be coming next year as well. Last week was Democracy Week at Colwarden House and at Colwarden House School. And following the sixth form school council elections held in this chamber, hosted by our Deputy Mayor, we were both invited to the school to witness the school council elections for the other year groups. It was particularly appropriate as it coincided with the county council by-election, which we were able to share with the pupils. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank, obviously, our Chief Executive, the Democratic Services team, and all the council officers for the outstanding way with which the election was run. This came as no surprise to me, given the exemplary team we do have here at Surrey Heath Borough Council. As we approach the season of remembrance, I already have a very full diary of commemorative events, and I look forward to seeing as many of you at them as possible, particularly the wreath-laying parade, which is on Sunday, the 9th of November. I have also today received this invitation, which I do hope, I know many of you work, but it's on Wednesday, November the 19th, and it's being held here, and it's for the Surrey Heath Faith Forum. But I am sure you will all receive individual emails. I would like to close by extending my sincerest thanks to all councillors for the dedication that you show to our community. I am well aware that you all spend many hours representing our residents, and I would like to thank you all for what you do to make our borough a better place. Thank you. So we move on to item 6, which is our leaders' announcements. Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just first add my condolences to both deceased councillors, friends and families, and for all those grieving at this time. Can I also say, as a proud Scot, I did not enjoy watching England destroy the set piece of Scotland, both at the line-out and the scrum in the semi-final. But congratulations to Alex and the team. Can I thank all the Democratic Services team and other officers for their diligence in ensuring a fair and free election completed last week. Specific call-outs to the Deputy Returning Officers personally overseeing the election was legal on behalf of the Surrey County Council CEO and Returning Officer Terence Hibbert, which were Nick Stevens, Rachel Willis and Vicky Hibbert. Not everywhere in the world has fair and free elections, so we should treasure them and note the positive contribution of all candidates and their supporters in ensuring residents had a variety of choices. As we know, they chose Alan Ashbury, who once again is first in another address book, and I know will serve the residents of Camberley West diligently to the best of his ability. There has been some uncalibrated criticism in recent months of the Council due to the uncomfortable choices that have had to be made on the back of the financial chaos inherited from the previous administration. To ensure we can sustain the delivery of our statutory or other essential services to our residents, I wanted to provide some balance by heralding some of the achievements that the Council team, under Nick Stevens' leadership, have collectively made possible. Starting with property and economic development, I am pleased to confirm the works are underway on the London Road site in Camberley, with our contractor Collards busy with asbestos removal and demolition, preparing the site for future development. We appreciate residents and visitors' patience through some of the temporary disruption involved. The Council continue to support people into work through the Youth Hub and Work Well initiatives. Over 6 months, our small team has helped get over 50 people into work, which is close to achieving the target set by DWP for the entire year. The team has also facilitated 2 very well-attended business breakfasts, and the Camberley Careers Fair had a fantastic turnout with over 202 attendees and 2 on-the-spot job offers being made. I'm also hugely pleased to confirm the long-awaited opening of the M3 footbridge reconnecting Bagshot and Lightwater, which reopened in August, and grateful to National Highways for their partnership approach. Unfortunately, Surrey County Council are now using this as an excuse to change school transport arrangements from Lightwater to and from Collingwood, placing young people on an unlit and unmade cross-country route or via a route requiring the crossing of multiple main arterial roads, placing them at additional risk of harm. Hopefully, Council Ashbury can now advocate for our young people's safety. Moving on to the Housing, Community and Recreation team. Supported by Surrey Heath Tree Wardens, the Council achieved its target of planting 6,000 trees in the municipal year. This is 1,000 trees more than previous year's total of 5,000, an increase of 20%. Our recreation team also organised free summer sports activity sessions for Surrey Heath young people. Fantastic, inclusive opportunities for children to get active, try new sports and have fun. Our leisure centre, Places Leisure Camberley, has recently undergone a £650,000 upgrade to its gym equipment, further enhancing the customer experience. Resurfacing of and upgrades around the 3G pitch at Camberley Lodge Park is now complete. This is a vital community asset, achieving an impressive 90% occupancy in the peak winter season and 75% occupancy in the off-peak season, with local teams, walking football groups and charities among the users. Our resettlement team has supported 3 individuals into unpaid employment, whilst another has completed an interpreter training course to support with access to employment. Other successes from our Housing Solutions team include reducing the number of households in bed and breakfast to 6, still 6 too many by the way. Floating support have successfully moved 2 residents on from our temporary accommodation into settled housing, and 2 officers are now qualified as level 4 trusted assessors, meaning the team can now assess for stair lifts and wet room home adaptations. Looking at built environment and regulation, development management have improved appeal performance with 66% of all appeals dismissed for the first 6 months of this municipal year. They have also maintained high performance for the determination of planning applications all above the government and Surrey Heath targets. The local plan inspection continues and officers are reacting professionally to any challenges made from the planning inspectors or others in the process to protect the integrity of our plan. Within environmental health over the summer, the team has been busy with noise nuisance complaints, investigating 116 cases, which is a 29% increase on last year. Good to highlight that business satisfaction with the environmental health team also remains high, with recent survey results showing that 100% of businesses, feeling that they were treated fairly, the visit was helpful, and the officer was knowledgeable, polite, and courteous. In licensing, and despite an 11% increase in the number of applications, 271 applications were determined in the first quarter of 2025, and 100% were within the Council's agreed process timescales. I think you will agree a long list of achievements and progress, so thank you again to all the Council officers across all the teams for your outstanding delivery in these and other areas during a period of challenge, change, and great uncertainty. Just a short update on LGR. I know you were waiting for it. The summary is, we don't know anything more, and we don't know when we will. The Ministry is not sticking to deadlines or commitments given to Surrey Heath leaders and CEOs, and is also not communicating well, including with the Prime Minister, who would appear today. In the interim void, the rumour mill is rife that we will be delayed. With the Surrey County Council leader shamefully having asked to have elections cancelled last year, and the national government complicit in agreeing, A failing Surrey County Council, by many measures, will be left with an administration that has now lost control of the chamber, with an accelerating erosion of support, and members well beyond their democratic mandate and best before date. It all reminds me of a messy play session I observed recently of under fives, and a shocking state of affairs for Surrey Heath residents and taxpayers to put up with. Lastly, staff achievements. There is only one personal development recognition to report this time. Congratulations to the ever-brilliant Dan Preston, Benefits Manager, who obtained a distinction in his Operations Departmental Manager Level 5 apprenticeship. And perhaps Miss Willis can confirm, and if I'm not mistaken, can also count quickly in the early hours of the morning. Really well done. Thank you, Mayor. That ends Leader's announcements.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Moving on to agenda item 7, executive committees and other bodies, executive minutes and recommendations. Please be aware that some of the recommendations are exempt. If you wish to discuss any of the exempt recommendations, we will need to defer them until the end of the meeting. Can I have a proposer for the executive minutes and the recommendations at minutes 31/E, 39E and 40E? Councillor
I'd
MacDonald.
like to propose, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second those minutes.
Are you happy to receive these minutes and agree the recommendations? Agreed. Can I have a proposer for the Planning Applications Committee from 17th of July, 31st of July and 21st of August? Councillor David O'Mahony, can I have...
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to accept the proposals for the meeting of the 17th of July, 31st of July and the 21st of August. The 18th of September I wasn't in attendance. That's been proposed by the Deputy Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second these 3 minutes that you listed of the Planning Applications Committee.
September.
Sorry. Yeah. Can I have a proposer for the Planning Application Committee minutes from the 18th of September?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose these minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I will be seconding those minutes. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes?
Agreed.
Can I have a proposer for the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee minutes from 9th of July? Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose the minutes for the 9th of July and the 10th of September of the Performance and Scrutiny Committee.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you.
Yes, I can second that, the 9th of July and the 10th of September.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes?
Agreed.
This one? Oh, this is this one. Yeah, got one. No, it's not. Can I have a proposer for the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee minutes from 8th of October? Councillor Kang?
Propose the minutes for the and Finance Committee of the 8th of October.
Thank you, Councillor Kang. Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kang. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Can I have a proposer for the Audit Standards and Risk Committee minutes? Councillor Pope.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose those minutes.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Raikes. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes?
Agreed.
Can I have a proposer for the External Partnership Select Committee minutes?
Thank
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to propose those minutes.
Thank you, councillor Glowett. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, happy to second them, obviously with the caveat the committee haven't agreed the 8th of October minutes yet, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Lee. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Thank you. Can I have a proposer for the Employment Committee minutes? Councillor MacDonald.
Happy to propose those minutes.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you, councillor Glowett. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes?
Agreed.
Can I have a proposer for the Licensing Committee minutes? Councillor Piningford.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to propose those minutes.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you, councillor Hood. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes?
Agreed.
Can I have a proposer for the notes of the Joint Staff Consultative Group?
Yes, I'm happy to propose those.
Thank you, councillor Glowett. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, councillor Finingcook. Members, are you happy to receive these notes?
Agreed.
I would like to ask Councillor Sean MacDonald to move the motion in the agenda. Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose the motion as documented and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Do you have a seconder?
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second that and motion and reserve the right to speak, if I can.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Can I start by thanking Councillor Garrett for his seconding of this motion today and Councillor Wheeler for her refining of it. I'm grateful to them both for their support. Members, in some things I can be a slow learner. We know, I hear you say. One of these is believing I can take a jumper off without taking my AirPods out. I was reluctantly up in the big smoke recently and coming out of Waterloo down the steps by the War Memorial. And I decided once again to tempt fate and the weather and take my jumper off mid-song. The inevitable happened and I'm immediately into a search and rescue mode for the AirPod, with the jumper still in motion, confusing all my senses. I quickly heard a friendly voice say, "Over there," and a finger point in the direction of the rogue AirPod. I said, "Thank you very much," in my nicest tone, and yes, I do have one. Recovered the article quickly, and then looked up with a smile. It struck me afterwards that in this small act of kindness towards me, my nationality wasn't important. My ethnicity wasn't important. My biological sex wasn't important. My gender wasn't important. My marital status wasn't important. My age wasn't important. My faith or none wasn't important. My political views weren't important. My disabilities, visible or invisible, weren't important. What was important was this small act of kindness by someone before 1,000 feet squashed the missing AirPod. What was important was this small act of kindness by someone before 1,000 feet squashed the missing AirPod, who I superficially think was of a different gender, was of a different nationality, was of a different ethnicity, was of a different age, and I suspect was of a different faith to me in that moment. Members, I'd like us all to encourage more of those moments through our actions, words and influence to drive mutual respect, community cohesion and goodwill in our small part of an increasingly troubled world. So our residents and visitors feel safe and welcomed for who they are, equal and free citizens of the planet. Members, I'm always mindful that there is a balance to what we can do here locally, and frankly, what is the responsibility of others to do nationally and beyond. And yet there are issues like the suspected genocide in Gaza, the the loss of girls' and women's rights in Afghanistan, the persecution of the Uyghurs in China, and the suppression of LGBTQ+ people in large swathes of Africa and the Middle East that blur these boundaries as they relate to human rights for which we are all responsible to maintain standards for. The right to practice a faith is one of these, and we have all been enjoying our fellow Sikh and Hindu residents this week, the festival of lights that is Diwali, lighting up an increasingly gloomy skies of autumn. After the Manchester terrorist synagogue attack, I thought, what can I do? So I wrote from scratch the motion before you today, first thing on a Monday morning. Yes, the head was engaged. However, this was driven from the heart. It says what I want to say, so I will say no more. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Garrett, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When you watch young children making friends, it's striking how simple their view of the world can be. They don't see the colour of someone's skin or worry about what faith they follow, what their background might be. For them, a good friend is usually just one who will share sweets, join in a game, or sit alongside them in a class. As adults, we often lose that instinct. Pressures from the wider world or challenges close to home can make us see differences first instead of a common ground, and that's why this motion matters. I want to thank the leader for reaching out to me and asking me to second this motion. Apart from a few minor tweaks, it is very much as he drafted it, and I was glad to support it. We don't always agree on issues debated in this chamber, but on this we agreed, and that is an important message to send. The motion acknowledges the pressures facing our residents and the way global events and national challenges can unsettle people here in Surrey Heath. It notes the damage caused when tensions spill over into prejudice, hate, or even violence. Like many, I was appalled by the recent terrorist attack on a synagogue in Manchester, a stark reminder of the consequences when hatred takes hold, and it rightly celebrates the role played by our emergency services nationally and locally, alongside the many voluntary faith groups working tirelessly to bring people together. It also sets out that what this council believes, that the rule of law matters, that democracy matters, that mutual respect matter, and diversity of our borough is something to be valued. I'm especially pleased we have made it clear this applies to all forms of prejudice and discrimination. No resident should ever feel judged or excluded for who they are. This motion is not about politics or point scoring. It's about leadership, example, and committing ourselves to a higher standard. It reminds us that Surrey Heath is strongest when we stand together as a community, when we value our diversity, when we respect one another, and we make clear that violence, hate, or prejudice of any kind has no place here. And perhaps, as we do that, we might remember the lessons children often teach us to look past differences and see the person first. At the end of the day, our residents don't expect us to agree on everything, but they do expect us to protect their right to live free from fear, respected for who they are. That is the spirit of this motion, and that is why I'm very pleased to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I would like to invite members to discuss the motion and make any comments. Please can I ask that if you are intending to move an amendment, you make this clear so I can invite another councillor to second this amendment. If an amendment is seconded, you should only debate the content of the amendment until a vote is taken on the proposed amendment. Members, please could I now invite debate on the motion? Councillor Tang.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the motion. Social tensions are really rooted by and created by inequality. And the root causes of inequality in this country stem from a lot of combinations of factors. And I don't need to give you a historical lesson, etc. but class structure, uneven wealth distribution, regional disparities, educational access, and policy decisions. What sort of hit me today was that actually an MP asking the PM, or pointing out that 10% of the wealthiest in the country have an equivalent income of the other 90%. And the average earning of a big firm CEO is 52 times that of an average full-time worker. So this country should not reward failure. Brexit was an ultra failure, now officially recognised today, lowering the standards of living. So my message, and I welcome the leader's motion, the public should hold those in power accountable to a decrease in living standards, not direct their hate to minority groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kang. Can I ask Councillor Wilson to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. If you're here, you're one of us. That should be the message to everyone in Surrey Heath. In 1968, after his racist Rivers of Blood speech, Enoch Powell was sacked from the Shadow Cabinet by Ted Heath. Back then, fomenting division and race hatred was unacceptable in mainstream political parties. My political journey started in the 80s in the anti-apartheid movement in Glasgow. In 1997, I took part in a counter-protest against the BNP in Glasgow Govan constituency, where I lived, and where we elected the first ever Muslim MP. I saw the racists of the BNP up close. In 2009, nearly 1 million people voted BNP in the European Parliament elections. No one votes for them nowadays. The 1 million people are still voting and still racist, but they vote for another party now. The radical right is growing in strength and being appeased by many politicians who should know better. Powell's speech would be acceptable today. The Prime Minister rightly described Reform's policy to scrap indefinite leave to remain as, quote, racist and immoral. Another MP recently proposed to deport people who are here legally under the EU settlement scheme. We need to be clear and describe this for what it is. They want to deport potentially 1 million or more people who are here legally. They want to take Britain out of the European Convention on Human Rights, which exists to prevent the government from interfering in our lives improperly. They want to deport nurses, care workers, our friends, our neighbours, our colleagues, members of our families. The radical right is an international movement. It is funded by the world's richest man who addresses their rallies and incites civil war. In Trump's America, uniformed, masked officers snatch people off the street and deport them, wrecking families without legal oversight. This is what the radical right would bring here. However, the anti-apartheid movement was successful in ending apartheid South Africa, so we can prevail over racism here and now too. We must maintain our liberal values of decency, tolerance, and respect for the rule of law. We must never appease far-right racism. The scenes of world leaders' sycophancy to Donald Trump are stomach-churning. Appeasement risks repeating the mistakes of the 1930s. We will stand alongside everyone in our community. We will never be an island of strangers. An MP said that people she wants to deport should, quote, go home. Well, I've got news for her. They're already home. If you're here, you're one of us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Can I ask Councillor Fanning-Cook to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, if you will allow me, I'd just like to steal a moment to extend congratulations to Councillor Alan Ashbury on his election following the very sad passing of Councillor Lewis that I represent, and I know that our residents are in good hands. I would like to speak now in support of this motion, and I'd like to thank the leader and all those who contributed to refining it so well to make it as strong as it is. It's my view that the motion demonstrates exactly what public service is meant to be: protecting, uniting, uplifting our communities, especially when so much of this world feels completely uncertain at the moment. We live in challenging times of conflict, inequality, financial strain and social tension seem to fill our news and social media feeds daily. And I know from my discussions with residents that many are feeling anxious and seem to have lost that sense of stability that every person needs to feel rooted. I live in and represent a very diverse community, and this week, while walking around my neighbourhood, I enjoyed seeing all the Diwali decorations outside houses alongside all the preparations for Halloween, which of course is a festival which originates from the Irish pagan festival of Samhain. Our communities are stronger for their diversity, but when tensions are high, fear and division can easily take root. And that is why this motion is so important. It reminds us that the strength of Surrey Heath, and indeed our whole country, lies not in what divides us, as we say so often, but how we stand together when times are tough, and times feel tough. This motion acknowledges the daily courage of those in our community that serve our emergency services and everybody else who works within our community on a voluntary basis, giving up their spare time to build bridges rather than division. This motion is not about politics for me, it's about principle. And passing this motion tonight will show our belief in democracy and respect for the law. It commits us as councillors and as representatives to treat one another with respect, to treat our residents with respect, to value equity and compassion, and to reject all prejudice. In essence, this motion will allow us to ensure that every resident, no matter their background, faith or belief, knows that this council, we stand firmly with them, and that they are valued and that they are respected and that they belong exactly for who they are. And I urge all members tonight to support this motion, to show our community that unity, respect and hope will always be stronger than the division that some are trying to sow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fanning-Cook. Councillor Robley.
Thank you, Mayor. I was speaking to a former councillor of this chamber a few weeks ago on her doorstep. And one of the things she said was, Rob, a lot of councillors repeat what's previously been said. I'm not going to repeat anything that's been said tonight, but I fully support it. And one of the things I'm well known for online is to say a very simple phrase, thank you for caring. Everyone supporting this motion tonight. And that's Sean and Victoria, and I'm sure everyone tonight, thank you for caring.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to exercise your right to reply?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everybody for your contributions. I think Councillor Lee said it well. I won't try and repeat anything that others have said. What I would like to do, though, is go back to perhaps what triggered this, which was anti-Semitism in a terrorist attack in Manchester. I've made no secret of the fact that I used to work for a company that was headquartered locally. When I worked for that company, I became aware of somebody that had an extremely high profile in the company, was very well respected. Occasionally we would correspond by email, where I would usually get upset about the fact that one of my customers was being poached onto his side of the business, or I wasn't quite getting my way on something else. Time moved on, and we ended up working in the same team. He worked for me technically, but I always viewed him as a peer. At some point in our journey together, travelling around the world, doing various best practice reviews, I became aware he was Jewish. It wasn't meaningful to me up to that point, and I still think it was kind of irrelevant in terms of the professional context. But I won't forget the time that we toured the ghetto of Krakow, the ghetto of Warsaw, and we drove in a taxi together past the gates of Auschwitz. He was the son of one of the children that came out in the Kinder Express. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I would now like to move to the vote on the proposal. I will now ask for a show of hands unless anyone indicates otherwise.
Unanimous.
Yeah, that's everyone. Yeah. Okay. Members, I declare the vote carried. Thank you very much. Agenda item 9, I would now like to invite the Head of Legal and Democratic Services to introduce the report on a community governance review. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry.
Well, we're jumping ahead.
Councillor, may I just...
I'd like to say that I'm also a parish councillor for Bisley. So, so just declaring my interest there.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to declare I'm also a parish councillor for Windlesham Parish Council.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Madam Mayor. There are some slides just to support the presentation of the report. Can I have the next slide, please? So, as you know, Community Governance Review can create, dissolve or amend parishes. It can change the style of a parish or alter the electoral arrangements. So just the first slide there just explains how we arrived at this stage. So on the 16th of July, the Council made a resolution to conduct a CGR of the entire borough of Surrey Heath. And that is conducted under the Local Government and Public Involvement in Health Act 2007. So the reason that resolution was made was to take account of the fact that we will be going through local government reorganisation and also in response to an objective that was in the Council's 25-26 annual plan. To address the request, and it was also to address the request to conduct a CGR that had been presented to create a new parish for the area of the current Windlesham North and Windlesham South. Next slide, please. So this slide just shows the responses that were received to the consultation that took place from the 24th of July to the 19th of September. And as you can see, this was the initial consultation, and the slide shows the responses that were received and the numbers. Can I move to the next slide, please? So the first set of slides will talk about the responses that we received for the unparished areas. So moving to the next slide. What you can see here, obviously, it's just colour, which shows that mainly the responses for in the unparished areas, the majority, we had 51 responses from the unparished areas and 95 from the parished areas, and that was in response to whether or not so the western area of Surrey Heath, only 0.1% of the registered voters in the unparished areas responded. Moving on to the next slide. This presents the same information but in a slightly different way. it's a pie chart which shows the responses by postcode. Shows that around 65%, which is 0.1%, came from postcode GU15. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So this slide shows the respondents that were in favour of the creation of new parishes. Although it's only 51%, 51 people living in the unparished areas responded to the consultation. A further 95 from the parished areas responded to the questions posed around the unparished areas. Whilst preferences were expressed on the number of new parishes that could be formed, which is shown at Annex A of the report, and officers are of the view that there is no current mandate to move towards the creation of new parishes in the unparished areas. Moving on to the next slide. So the next set of consultation questions related to the areas of Bisley, Chobham and West End parish councils. So moving on to the next slide, you can see that the description there of the responses that were received. So responses were again marginal in Bisley, Chobham and West End parish areas. So you can barely see that the blue shows the responses and the other colour suggests the non-responders. But of those that responded, the majority did not support a merging of parish councils, largely did not support the disbanding of parish councils, and predominant responses were to the number of councillors should remain the same. So moving on to the next slide. So this slide shows the response to the question, do you agree with the proposal to move Minorca Avenue out of West End parish boundaries? And you can see the response there. That West End, those that responded agreed with the proposal to move Minorca Avenue out of the West End parish area. Moving on to the next slide. The next question was, do you agree with the proposal to move Scotts Grove Road to Chobham Parish? And the slide there illustrates the response. In relation to the Scotts Grove, moving into Chobham Parish area, the desire for the move was followed the agreement. However, there were insufficient responses to be clearly guided. Moving on to the next slide. On to Windlesham Parish Council. In relation to Windlesham, we asked the same questions regarding consolidation, realignment or disaggregation. Questions were also posed over abolishing Windlesham North and Windlesham South wards and replacing them with a single Windlesham ward, and altering the number of councillors representing each parish. And the next slide shows the responses that were received. The number of responses relating to Windlesham Parish were higher than for the other parished or unparished areas, but most notably Windlesham, which equated to 12.3% of the electorate for the village. Lower levels of responses were received from Bagshot and considerably less from Lightwater. Moving on to the next slide. So in response to the question, would you support an alteration to the parish council boundaries? The responses are illustrated on the slide. Of the 12.3% of the electorate of the village of Windlesham, shown on the previous slide, 80.9% of those who responded, so that's 9.91% of the village electorate, were in favour of alteration to the parish boundaries. Lower numbers were received for the other areas. Of note, from those who responded, the Bagshot residents were also in favour of a change to boundaries. However, the Lightwater residents were not. The next slide is a summary of the written responses that were received, some of the themes that were found from the written responses that are actually set out in the report. So I won't propose to read those again, but you would have seen them in the report. So moving on to the next slide. In response to the question, should councillor numbers for the parish change? As you can see from this slide, the view of Windlesham Village residents was that to increase the councillor numbers 33.1%, or ensure the numbers were equal to Lightwater and Bagshot, 37.3%. So moving on to the next slide. In response to the question, do you have any comments on the proposal to merge Windlesham North and Windlesham South? So the responses are displayed there. And this chart shows that the responses, whilst low in number compared to the overall electorate, show clear support for merging Windlesham North and South. Can I have the next slide? So the considerations for forming the recommendations were based on statutory guidance, legislation, the response rates, the previous CGR in 2019, and we also reviewed other authorities. The Council needs to consider whether it has sufficient mandate to recommend a change. And the recommendations are set out within the report. Right, on the next slide, there's the recommendations for the unparished areas, but they're in the report, so I won't go through them. And the next slide shows the recommendations for Bisley, Chobham and West End parish councils. And then the last slide shows the recommendations for Windlesham Parish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Boating. I would like to invite comments on this report and ask a member to move, Councillor MacDonald to move the motion in respect to this report.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't see 30 of us jumping up at that unique opportunity, but I'll take it. I would like to propose a motion in response to the officer report and reserve the right to speak. Councillor Phelan-Cook's going to share the motion around. It had been shared with group leaders previously who may or may not have shared it with their members.
Thank you, Councillor.
I think we're on version 6. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Do you... Is that right? Yeah. Yes. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to second this motion and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. I don't know whether members need a moment to read it or whether group leaders have shared it around previously. You would like a minute or not? Could I respectfully ask we let members have 2 minutes just to read it? Thank you.
Can I just say that it's on the screen as well for our viewers viewing from home? Thank you.
with your leave, Mayor, maybe
Thank
I'll
you.
make a start.
Councillor MacDonald, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members. Members, you will recognise us revisiting this topic now for the third time in this term of office, after initial discussions in February and the cross-party support for the launch of the CGR process in July. The fundamentals of its importance have not changed from my perspective. The threat of LGR change with the European councils cutting community facilities and services to meet statutory duties. The principles of subsidiarity and self-determination enabling residents to take control of their local affairs and to direct our decision-making. The officer report summarises the responses and proposes a way forward from our soft start, low-cost approach taken to date to capture and assess residents' wishes. I'd like to thank all the officers involved in getting us to this point, as I think we would all acknowledge a tricky topic to navigate. And perhaps careers with Cirque du Soleil beckons with the balancing skills we have seen on show. In approaching this topic, again, I am guided by the 4 C's. Compliance. Everything we might do must align with the law of the land and relevant guidance provided to interpret it. I suspect the monitoring officer wouldn't let us away with anything different. Consistency. Everything must be done in line with how others have proceeded in similar situations, taking note this is not an exact science and CGRs are ongoing in various places at the moment. Cost. Any expenditure must be proportionate to the need to ensure residents' wishes are clearly heard and always even-handed on what options are available and their pros and cons. Community. All other factors being considered, local community wishes must be reflected on objectively and transparently with their wishes honoured. Members will note that the officer recommendation has been tweaked in a couple of places in the proposed motion. However, primarily in the matters that relate to Windlesham Parish, where without direct council prompting, a significant number of residents, mainly of Windlesham Village, have clearly signalled they wish other arrangements to be put in place. I believe we are bound to act on this community feedback and be consistent with our 2029 action by specifically placing the choice with its pros and cons to Windlesham residents. Alas, this is very much like the Brexit referendum. The part that wishes to change gets primacy. Those they leave behind get to decide how they move forward. They don't get a right of veto. My political adversaries will think I have an agenda here. I don't and never have. It may indeed surprise them to know exactly how I responded to the initial consultation, as it's probably the reverse of what they expect. I have consistently sought to strictly compartmentalise my personally held views on concerns about Windlesham Parish Council, its efficiency, its effectiveness and governance from the formal procedure aspects of this community governance review process that I, as well as all of you, are duty-bound to oversee, is completed appropriately and fairly for all residents, transparently, in line with the Council's legal duty. I am, in this task, grateful for the Council of the broad-based working group, the Chief Executive, the Monitoring Officer, and the Head of Democratic Services, as we have approached this challenge. I recommend the motion to the Council and hope for all members to support in getting feedback from residents in the relevant areas, particularly the non-parished areas where community services are most at risk from unitary changes, so we can know what their settled will is and then consider in due course how we act in line with it. Having recently been in the wilderness paths above Arica at 3,000 feet plus, in rain, wind and mist, this whole process reminds me of how you get off a mountain safely. One step at a time, calmly and carefully, always reassessing the situation with each step. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Ashbury, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, I'd like to thank the officers for pulling such a comprehensive report together for us to consider tonight. I know on top of everything else, with governance reviews in the wider county, pulling this together has been not necessarily a labour of love, but it has been a significant amount of work for a small group of people. So thank you to the officers for bringing this to us and putting this together tonight. I've said it before and I will say it again. I believe in democracy. It may not be perfect, but fundamentally, people having the right to influence how they are governed is ingrained in my core beliefs. The feedback on the CGR that we have received from the non-parished areas in particular has been a little disappointing so far. Possibly due to the summer, possibly due to some confusion with the LGR consultation taking place relating to the future of Surrey as a whole. I therefore commend the idea that we reach out to residents again to ensure that they are given a robust chance to let us know their feelings before we quash the idea of new town or parish councils for good. But as I've said before, we must be mindful of the costs. As we are aware, there will need to be parish precepts raised if we are to implement these very local councils to oversee community assets, which we currently estimate to be around about £1 a week per household, similar to the current parished areas of the borough. But my question, I asked it last meeting, what is local democracy worth? That is a fundamental question that our residents will need to answer in order to guide our deliberations. I firmly believe we should let people have their say and we should trust them to tell us how they would like to see local government in our borough structured into the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury.
Johnny Cope.
Do you have any comments, members? So, Councillor Cope.
Could I just raise a point of order? And I'm not trying to be difficult in any way, but I don't want to be here again because of a procedural issue. My understanding was motions were limited to 350 words. This looks like it's longer than 350 words, so I wonder whether it might be sensible to slightly disaggregate and have multiple motions.
Cope, Mrs Boateng will respond. Thank you.
Oh, as this was an officer report, in that situation, the motion, the amended motion, be longer. Thank you.
Councillor Cope, would you like to speak again or no?
I may do later, but that was just a point of order because I just wanted to check that we were doing things by book.
So, Councillor Glout, and then Wilson. Yeah, Councillor Glout, then Councillor Wilson, Councillor Wheeler. Thank you, Councillor Glout.
Thank you, Mayor. Like many of you, I am disappointed by the low response from the unparished areas of the borough. I think that this is partly due to the fact that a lot of the information was on social media and that not everybody looks at this. Also, residents probably didn't fully appreciate what it was about and what it would mean to them once unitaries were introduced. So I welcome the officers' report and I thank them very much for producing it. I think that a leaflet about the possibilities of parish or town councils delivered to every household, containing a clear explanation of what the proposals are, along with the pros and cons, would, I think, encourage much more engagement. And so I support that part of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glout. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. 80% of parish councils have fewer than 2,500 residents. Windlesham Parish has over 13,000 voters, but more importantly, it has 3 separate individual communities, Bagshot, Lightwater and Windlesham villages. If it didn't exist, it could not be set up today. Government guidance is clear about what defines a community in this context, and it specifically says that it would not straddle a motorway, for example. It is a historic anomaly. Parish councils exist for two reasons: community representation and local administration. In defining a parish, the guidance says, quote, "The views of local communities and inhabitants are of central importance," end quote. That is why I support this motion. The current mega parish does not represent the community of Windlesham Village. On the contrary, its residents' views are disregarded. 2/3 of the current councillors were either elected unopposed or co-opted. The atmosphere is so hostile, no one wants to stand for election. The only parish councillors to be elected by voters are myself and the 5 incredibly courageous members representing Windlesham. Many in this chamber know what we have suffered simply to represent the public who voted for us. The problematic structure of the council has led to this inevitable conflict. On local administration, the parish council does not benefit from economies of scale. Council tax is not lower here, and there are huge inefficiencies due to its massive size. There are very frequent meetings and too many councillors to be efficient. Villages have to compete for resources, and this slows the process to the speed of the slowest and prevents genuinely beneficial projects coming forward. The council's communications are divisive and serve to upset and antagonise many residents. Parish councils, which only cover one community, do not have these serious problems. The structure of Windlesham Parish Council has made it dysfunctional. I understand that this has been the case for at least 25 years. With the imminent abolishing of the Borough Council, it is vital that people in the villages have effective community representation. Every time the people of Windlesham Village are asked, they give the same answer. They do not consent to the current mega parish arrangement. Democracy and fairness demand that we give them the opportunity to break free from this anomaly of a parish council. People of Windlesham, this is a final call to arms. The coming consultation needs everyone to take part and clearly tell Surrey Heath that Windlesham Village deserves and requires its own parish council. Disaggregate, split, divorce, Wexit, whatever it's called, it will lead to communities being free, friendly neighbours rather than held prisoner. This motion opens the door. Now the people of Windlesham can walk through it. Let's take the final steps together to one Windlesham. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wheeler. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to the leader for acknowledging that there was no direct question that encouraged the residents of Windlesham to have the option to have a separate parish council. I have a couple of clarification questions for which I would be very grateful on the motion, which I'll come to shortly. On the 16th of July, the CEO introduced a borough-wide CGR. The question that related to the areas I represent were, should Chobham merge with other areas? And despite 2 separate requests for a separate parish council for Windlesham Village, the proposal was to create a single Windlesham parish ward to replace the north and south divide. But there was no clear question on whether to disaggregate Windlesham Village from the wider 3-village Windlesham Parish Council. It was laid out at that time that there may be further consultation from the 27th of October. Councillor MacDonald said that this was an initial view stage and gave assurances that we could make this happen before the guillotine point. It looks now as though the guillotine point might be delayed slightly, but I would be really grateful if we could all aim for the original date that we were looking for. He went on to say that he was giving the residents their rights for self-determination, and that he was keen for them to take ownership for their future. Councillor Wilson said that the CGR specifically gave the option for disaggregation, but as I've already said, it didn't, and that question wasn't asked anywhere. So the residents of Windlesham had to navigate a form that only asked them about reversing the ridiculous split that was introduced previously. The message came back loud and clear, despite the challenges of the forms, that the residents in Windlesham wanted a separate parish council, much louder and more clearly than any other option that has been considered this evening. It will be of no surprise that I support the amendment and Councillor MacDonald's motion. The only area that I disagree slightly with is the percentage of residents that are required to respond and the disparity in that percentage between the non-parished areas and the parished areas, particularly as the only reference that we have is sorry, let me just turn over my page, is a low response, but no number of that low response for the non-parished areas. I have talked before about how the residents of Windlesham are forced to stay in what may be seen by some as an abusive relationship. An example of this is that the parish voting to have a contingency to fight the disaggregation, even talking about considering a judicial review. This is very much like turkeys voting for Christmas, and I am concerned that I'm concerned that Windlesham Village residents have contributed to a somewhat conservative, with a small c, instance of the huge percentage required and the disparity between that and the rest of the borough. In order to ensure that what could be seen as a bullying partner in this relationship cannot force the subjugated village of Windlesham to remain by simply not responding, or responding to say that they are forcing us to stay, could I please have absolute clarity and reassurance in the wording of this motion that Windlesham Village be asked if they wish to go or to stay, and Lightwater and Bagshot be asked whether, if Windlesham wish to go, what parish arrangements they would prefer. It must not be possible for Lightwater and Bagshot to imprison Windlesham by either not responding or having a choice on whether or not Windlesham should stay. So that's the clarification that I ask for from the leader, which appear in point EI and point EII, that there is absolutely clarity there that if Bagshot and Lightwater don't respond, and 20% of Windlesham do respond, and the larger percentage of that 20% want to go, that Windlesham Village can leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Perrott?
Bisley Parish Council started in 1874. It's an unusual place because we also have a Bisley Residents Association and very well attended coffee mornings and community cafe, not to mention there's a British legend and a WI there. So to merge parish councils would be disastrous, as the community spirit will be lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perrott. Councillor Rowlands and then Councillor Hode. Councillor Rowlands, would you like to speak?
Not working. Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. It may be a simple question. Will the new, if there is a new parish council for the unparished areas, will they have any precept raising capacity? Well, I was told that there's no precept raising capacity available. Is that the case? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Hode.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we probably all agree that this is a big decision. If we're going to make a decision of this magnitude, we do need to make it on sufficient, robust data. So I absolutely agree that we need to go out for a second pass and gather more data from all our residents. I have two thoughts related to that. One is that I think mostly the current or the most recent survey was done online. That doesn't bring everybody in, and I support the idea of doing a paper-based survey. I would perhaps suggest, although there's a cost associated with it, that we don't just leaflet through doors, that if it's possible to, we do individually address letters to residents, because I think that's far more likely to get them to open it, read it, and engage with it, rather than toss it in the recycling. But I appreciate there is a cost associated with that, but I think we really should focus on doing everything we can to really drive engagement from our residents across the borough. The second thing I have, and I'm not going to be making myself popular with everybody in the chamber here with this, is that my feeling is that in the review that we've done recently, we had a number of lobby groups who had very strong positions, and this resulted in really quite ferocious, polarised debate in a number of areas. My personal suspicion is that because of that, we had some residents who had a strong view and they very much engaged, but a big chunk of people in the middle without a strong or formed view took one look and thought, I don't need this. I'm stepping away and I'm not engaging and not participating. I think it would be helpful for us as a council to try and get good engagement from a selection of residents across the entire field. If we as councillors could perhaps consider disengaging ourselves from this debate this time around. My personal view is that this should be very much a resident-led, resident-driven decision. My own choice is that, although I'm a councillor in Lightwater, I will be pushing Lightwater residents to engage in the process. I'm not going to be telling them what I think they should think. I know what I think, but I want them to engage with their own thoughts. I would therefore very much like to encourage councillors to just step back a little and give residents space to think about it and make decisions. And overall, I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hode, Councillor Cope, and then Councillor Lee, and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, firstly, I'm just going to split my comments a little bit, talk about Camberley and Frimley first, and then talk about Windlesham afterwards. When I stood up to speak on this topic in July, I was on the fence about whether to support the principle of consulting on town councils. I don't think I personally can support moving this any further. I think when we're in a situation where only 51 people are responding to a consultation, it does rather show us that even though I may support the principle of having a Camberley Town Council of some way, residents are not that engaged in it. We in this chamber are unusual and we care more about these types of things than the ordinary resident, and I think we need to be aware of that. That we cannot be seen to impose this from above. If it is not demanded from below, it shouldn't go any further. And given the fairly pitiful response rate from the unparished areas, I don't really see much justification for moving it forwards. But that said, if this motion does pass, then I will happily promote the next stage of the consultation. I also just want to touch on Windlesham Parish Council. We do seem to spend a disproportionate amount of time on this issue. I suspect my residents are slightly surprised how much time I spend thinking about Windlesham Parish Council, but I do just want to raise a couple of points. The first point was in the report, it's not in the motion, but I'm very concerned about the idea that we in some way disaggregate levels of representation from population, i.e. by moving to a set number of councillors for each village. Some of us in this chamber, like myself, represent two-member wards. Some of us represent three-member wards. I don't think it would be in any way justifiable for me to claim that St Paul's is underrepresented because only myself and Councillor Thorne are here, and that we should get an extra councillor even though we have fewer people. That seems to me a nonsense argument, and I think it would set actually quite a dangerous precedent. So I'm very much against that, but I know that that's not in the motion, but that was just a comment. But the main thing on this Windlesham Parish Council issue is I need an understanding of how much this is going to cost, because we're constantly hearing about how there's not much money to go around, we've got limited officer resources, and we seem to be spending a lot of time on this. I really appreciate a clear understanding in terms of officer time as well as direct costs. How much has this cost how much has this cost today, and how much will it cost if we end up disaggregating Windlesham Parish? Because I cannot justify to residents living in St Paul's Ward for them to pay for a project that, frankly, they don't care two hoots about. So I really need to understand the costs on this. As I say, I won't be supporting the motion, but I'd still appreciate some answers to those questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to speak, but Councillor Hode inspired me to speak. I think, first of all, very much welcome the leader's amendment to what was on the table. I think it's critically important. I wanted to pick up on a couple of things actually that Councillor Cope said. First of all, we are unusual. We have given up an evening to talk about governance and democracy. That's a couple of hours, right? That's probably more than the average person thinks about politics, not in a week, not in a month, but in an entire year. So we are quite different. Hands up, who knew what CGR was before we started talking about it? Not many. Have a guess how many members of the public have any clue at all what CGR is. They haven't got a Scooby-Doo. There is little wonder we have a low response rate. We were democratically elected in 2023, plus obviously by-elections, to be community leaders. There's an onus and a duty on us to represent those people that democratically elected us. We don't have an individual referendum on every single piece of legislation that comes through this chamber, and this is little different. There is a job and an onus on us to engage with the electorate. In the Camberley West and Frimley by-election, myself, as one of the leaders of campaigns, Councillor Cope as well, and others, led active engagement with residents. And that is what's desperately lacking in the unparished areas. That's why nothing happened. You know, it's no secret, was it 3 different pieces of literature went out in Windlesham explaining things to people, providing community leadership. And that seems to be part of what's the fundamental missing piece here. We want to kind of just wash our hands and step back and say, well, it's up to the public. No, it's our responsibility. We've been democratically elected to show leadership. And that's what we're here for. In terms of engagement, looking at Old Dean by-election is a classic example. You know, there was a healthy political debate in the Old Dean by-election. Councillor Garrett's nodding as well, and we both agree there was good political debate. That's why the turnout didn't fall that far in a by-election from a lovely, warm, sunny May to what wasn't exactly the greatest of Octobers. And the same with Camberley West and Frimley. There was healthy debate from the Liberal Democrats, from the Conservatives, from Labour, from Reform, and that's what's missing from the CGR piece. The only reason there's a bumper response from Windlesham is because there's a good group of people, I may not agree with them politically, but they are a good group of people who are driving political engagement. And that is what's fundamentally missing. We need to get off our butts as councillors and start informing and working and representing those residents that put us in this place in the first place.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to speak either, but here I am. Councillor MacDonald at the start of this motion mentioned Brexit, and Councillor Wilson mentioned Wexit. So I think there are a lot of parallels that we can draw from Brexit debate. This is a very highly charged, I'm talking about the disaggregation or potential disaggregation of Windlesham Parish Council. It's clearly very highly charged. There are clearly very strong views on both sides of that particular debate. And I think if we're going to take any lessons from the Brexit debate, as Councillor Wheeler mentions, it's very important that we ask the right question. It has to be incredibly clear. And I remember the politicians at the time spent a long time trying to work out what that Brexit question should be. But I think what's even more important, when we think about what goes into the consultation, and Councillor Glauert talks about the literature that mentions the pros and cons, it's absolutely crucial that what goes out in that communication is completely objective and completely based on fact. So talking about the financial implications of leaving, the financial implications of the status quo, talking about what that might look like in terms of representation. But I think we have to really avoid any kind of hyperbole in that communication and do everything we can to have the governance internally to make sure that's as objective and fact-based as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Garrett, and then Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I know this has been recorded, and I'm really sorry that I'm actually going to tend to agree with some of the stuff that Councillor Lee said, which really scares me, to be honest. I suppose it can happen every now and then, can't it? And also, myself and Councillor Cope haven't been comparing notes, but actually a lot of what he said I agree with, although I don't agree with all of it. Firstly, I'd like to thank the officers. A very detailed report gives us lots of information. I know they've been pressured into doing things like LGR as well as a by-election, so thank you very much. As far as Western Surrey Heath is concerned, I believe the officer's recommendation is most sensible approach. The lack of engagement was not down to residents not caring, but largely due to lack of awareness. I mean, how many acronyms? I mean, I didn't know about half these acronyms before I became a councillor. I'm beginning to wish I hadn't heard of most of them, to be fair. LGR, CGR, a lot of people probably thought they were all the same thing. So I think in the case of that, I think we certainly need to engage with residents more. I do tend to agree with what Councillor Lee said on there. We are in a bubble in this chamber. I won't say we live and breathe it, because that's quite scary if that's all we do, but we certainly are in a bubble, and we hear a lot more about this. We must do better engaging with residents. Not everybody in Surrey Heath is on social media. The leader isn't even on social media. So we need to engage better with residents. Engagement in Bisley and Chobham and West End was limited, likely because there is no strong feelings about the existing parish arrangements, in contrast to Windlesham. From the details before us, we can see that 88% of Windlesham electorate did not participate. If we progress to a further consultation, we must be confident that the outcome is truly representative, with residents having a clear and balanced understanding of the implications. It would also be helpful to agree what constitutes a low response rate. Good luck with that one, I suppose. And if participation falls below that threshold, to seriously consider whether it is appropriate to proceed. I take note of Councillor Wheeler's point and suggest we should look at setting a response rate for the unparished areas as well. I appreciate that if we follow the officer recommendation for the unparished areas to test whether there is a genuine interest in creating new parishes, there will be a cost involved. My concern lies with the cost of what is being proposed in Windlesham as well. The recommendation before us does not give a breakdown of the costs, although it does suggest additional officer time may be required, time which is not currently budgeted for. I would like to get a proper handle on costs involved. We're regularly reminded by the Leader and administration of the financial situation we are in, and we need to make savings wherever possible. Yet we're being asked to agree a further consultation without knowing the costs. Why should the residents in my ward, and indeed the whole of Surrey Heath, be paying for another consultation in a parished area when the previous two consultations have already failed to produce a clear mandate for change? At some point, we must question whether repeating the exercise is best use of public money. I do appreciate there are strong feelings within Windlesham, as has been shown in this chamber on a number of occasions since I became a councillor in 2019. I too believe in democracy, which is why we are in the chamber tonight for all us elected members to debate and decide on the motion we see before us. Whilst I'm happy to support point 1 and point 2, I'm struggling to point 3 based on the issues I have already highlighted. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I'm not actually going to mention Windlesham Parish Council, because I actually agree with Councillor Cope that I think we have spent a lot of time over my time in this chamber, and especially over the last months, trying to resolve the internal difficulties that the Windlesham Parish Council has. So that's the last time I'm going to mention it there. So, as a whole, I support the amendment that was put forward by the Leader, and I particularly want to make a reference to point 2, point B, which is the western boundary of West End Parish be altered to provide that Minorca Avenue deep cut falls entirely outside the parish boundary. The reason why I support that, I think that was just an error at one point in history, because they are essentially houses that are within the deep cut village settlement and would not fall within the West End parish area at all. So I'm very glad that that amendment has been included here, and I would be supportive of that. As a whole, and I would join with others in thanking the officers for the hard work that they've done on this. It's an incredibly difficult job, and the report that has been produced is detailed, despite the lack of data that we were probably hoping for. While I did agree with Councillor Cope earlier, I am just going to have a slight disagreement with regards to residents not being interested in this. I'm going to admit that to this date, I don't think I've actually had a resident in either of the villages that I represent say to me, what's going on with this community governance review? But you know what they have talked to me about is LGR, what's happening with the council, what is happening for Surrey as a whole. So there is definitely an interest in how governance and local government in Surrey works, especially in Surrey Heath. And I know that my residents in Deepgate and Mitchell are not shy of telling me what they think when they think I've done something wrong, not so much when they think I've done something right, but they are not shy in speaking up to me. So I do think that there is a potential difference here with regards to when we were running our consultation at the same time as the LGR's consultation, that people may have just gone and done the local government, the government's consultation. So I would be very interested to see when the results of the LGR consultation are published, if they are published, what residents and what organisations have spoken about parish councils with that. Because I know that I am routinely spoken to about and engaged with. There are areas in Surrey Heath that have parish councils. What about Deepgate? I'm not saying that people are all of a sudden in favour of a parish council, but there is that discussion. So I'm very supportive of going back in a multimedia attempt, so with social media, with addressed direct mail, in an attempt to ensure that we do get a response. I do think if we get that response back, and the overwhelming response at that point is, no, we don't want a parish council, we don't get the level of response, I'm not going to force it. That's where I do agree with Councillor Cope. I don't think I could force a parish council onto someone, but the level of responses that we received, to me, suggests that people just weren't aware of the consultation. That's why I'm supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon. Thank you, Councillor Rise.
First of all, I'd like to say I think Councillor Wheeler makes a very valid point. People shouldn't be forced to stay in an abusive relationship. If Windlesham doesn't feel it belongs, I'd support that. No problem at all. That's my piece on that one. On Councillor Hode's early comments about people not being aware or being informed, I think we need to point out that Councillor Wilson did a stellar job of leafleting the entire village and most of the parish. I think the awareness side of it has been covered by the leaflets he gave out. So I think the awareness point of view was covered. This will be the fourth time we go back to residents to ask them this question. So I'd like to suggest in point three, CII, it doesn't give the option to Bagshot and Lightwater residents if they want to stay together. First of all, it just presumes if change was supported by Windlesham residents, whether residents in Bagshot and Lightwater wish to move to two separate parishes or stay combined as Bagshot and Lightwater, it doesn't give an option to stay as current arrangement. So I think, in the interest of fairness, because we are three villages as one council currently, we should ask that question in point II. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Councillor White.
This is where I usually say I wasn't going to speak, but I'm not going to say that this time. A lot of what I've written down tonight has been covered, but one of the things is how many times do we have to consult to get the answer that some people want? The figures this time round are lower than the last time round, even with, as been mentioned, the two letters that went out by Councillor Wilson to Bagshot and Windlesham. One of my questions is, who would do the direct marketing, and would the parish council be consulted if this went ahead? Should it be done as a non-political basis, and as Councillor Hode alluded to, councillors should be asked if they would step back and let officers take the lead. I feel that this amendment or motion undermines the professionalism and unbiased comments from our officers, and that we should go with their recommendation. Last night, quite a few of us in this room, mostly in the audience, attended a independent training session regarding devolution and LGR. Many examples were given how larger councils are going to be necessary to get things done within LGR. And quite a few examples were given to us where new areas are being put together and they're larger councils as opposed to small councils. And we were advised that smaller councils are going to struggle, and that was by an independent trainer. Now I've lost my drift. Right, I've completely lost it now. As I said earlier on, how many times do we have to do this consultation to get the same answer? And the figures are lower than last time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor, any other councillors? Councillor MacDonald, would you like to exercise?
Thank you, Mayor. Before I do so, can I just check whether the officers wish to respond to any of the points that have been raised, particularly around things like the cost to date, the projected costs going forward with the plans as they exist, those sorts of matters? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, in terms of the costs, so it's, as I think I've said before, it's not actually a very easy question to answer on this point, but there's been limited actual cash expenditure to date, but it's mainly been officer time, but that has been fairly substantial. As you've mentioned, it's obviously a fairly comprehensive report, so we've had to pull together. So there was £90,000 estimated in the previous report, but it's obviously not within the budget, so that's something to be mindful of. In terms of actually the the direct marketing that you've been mentioning about whether or not we go ahead to the second stage of consultation, my understanding is that it's going to cost in the region of £3,500 if we were to do a leaflet drop. I think we've been referring to it as the pizza leaflets. If there was more of a direct letter to all of the households that are going to be contacted, it's more in the region of £11,000. Then going forward, if there is a proposal to actually either disaggregate an existing parish council and or set up new parish councils, it's very, very likely that either there will be overtime costs or there will be very much likely to be an additional member of staff required for a fixed term period. Again, it's hard to say how much that would be, but obviously you can imagine that that's not going to be within existing budgets, basically. That helps. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Ms Willis, very much. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. Maybe Ms Willis could help me with a nod here. I think there was one person I didn't thank for his efforts to date to your left-hand side. Would that be correct? Yeah, could I thank Mr Hall for his... I love the way he moved his head there. Can I thank Mr Hall for his efforts in pulling all of this together? It's been much appreciated. I think as Ms Willis said there, listen, the issue of costs has come up, so let me take it on board. So Ms Willis highlighted that we budgeted based on other benchmarks 90,000 for this exercise. To date, we have spent very little, apart from officer time, which obviously was within budget, and there were some compromises that were made there in terms of other things that we could have been doing. So we have said we won't do that, and we'll do this instead, again, based on the emerging picture with LGR. So I'm fairly relaxed as to where we are so far. I think it is a legitimate question, and Councillor Ho, thank you for raising it around whether we should be targeting or whether it should be, as I call it, the pizza leaflet. There are pros and cons, and there are various GDPR issues involved in doing targeted mail because you can't use the electoral register as an example. So those are the sorts of administrative issues that I've referred to in point 4 that we'll need to work through. But if we go to the next stage, as Ms Willis highlighted, we have the resource within the Democratic Services team to manage it, again by prioritising. We could be considering up to 11,000. It's only when we then go beyond that, which obviously would have to come back to this council for a decision about the future, based on that feedback, that we then would be committing potentially further funds up to the 90,000, which is the resource that I think Ms Willis was referring to. So as I said in my analogy of getting down the mountain safely, we're taking this one step at a time. We're managing the risks of the council, because let's be honest, there's a few parties who would like to see us trip up. So we're taking it one step at a time. We're trying to make sure that we look at what the relevant benchmarks are across other CGR processes, and we are applying appropriate resource. I will try not to get too carried away with people criticising the administration for spending money, who were quite happy to spend over 100 million on various properties that have just been a millstone around this council's neck ever since. And I think the relevant quote was, if we didn't buy the properties, they were going to invest in Bracknell. So what did they do? They took the money from here and they invested in Bracknell. However, it is a relevant point. I think Councillor Cope and others, Councillor Garrett as well, are right to be concerned about their residents' money being spent on some of these issues. It is, I think, as Councillor Lee has drilled into a few of us over time, the price of democracy. At the end of the day, we can't pick and choose which of the legislative frameworks we comply with. We have to try and comply with them all to the best of our ability. There has been this point raised a few times about, here we go again, Groundhog Day. It's slightly unfair because I think Councillor Wheeler is right, and you know, that's not something I don't say very often. The specific question wasn't raised around this point, and what we actually got for the residents of Windlesham was effectively an unprompted response from the point of view of the questionnaire itself. So we do need to be mindful of that. That's what the guidance says, and that's what we will do. I have to take to task Councillor Wilson, again something I don't do very often. This motion does not say that you will get one Windlesham. This motion says that we will ask the residents what they want to do. But it does say, and I will happy to clarify, I thought it was clear in the words, obviously not. I will clarify that the first question is, based on the responses we have to date, does Windlesham want to stay or go? And if Windlesham wants to go, they take primacy because that's what the guidance says. It's then back to Bagshot and Lightwater. What do you want to do about it? It is what it is. I agree with Councillor Cope, and I agree with him, by the way, on people only seeing out the democratic mandate and not extending their mandate. It's a shame you're a late convert to that. However, I agree with Councillor Cope that we shouldn't be pushing these things from above. We should be waiting to see what the demand is from below. And I think this is a proportionate response to that. We don't have big issues in certain parts of the borough. They seem to be happy, as Councillor Perrott said, with the current arrangements, so therefore we won't do anything. But we do need to acknowledge that apart from potentially look at appropriate asset transfers, which we are doing with all the parishes that are currently in play to protect them from unitary vultures. But we do need to, I think, challenge the unparished areas that haven't quite seen the light yet in this regard and see what their opinion is, because they need to understand that some of these assets and some of these services that could potentially be at serious risk as we go to unitary. So, in summary, we will be resident-led. Oh, sorry, I missed out. Somebody raised an issue of precept. Who was that? One of you. Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Whilst I understand what various ministers have said in this regard, unless the monitoring officer wants to correct me, the legislation hasn't changed, and therefore the parishes can continue to raise precept, and new parishes can raise precept. And my understanding is in any of the structural change orders that have been issued to date around the various things like LGR, there actually isn't any scope for them to say that the parishes can't raise a precept. So there would be a potential for precepts to be raised, and I think it's important that we all remember that it's incremental. So the grass is getting cut today, and somebody is paying for that. The grass will get cut tomorrow, and broadly speaking, the cost of cutting the grass will be the same. It's the administration of a parish that would be potentially additional because you don't get the shared support of the officers that we have here today. So that is a difference, but it's the incremental. We shouldn't be looking at the whole precepts of Chobham, Windlesham, whatever as our benchmark. It is part of that. So I think I've covered off everything. No, actually, I want to go back to Councillor Cope and agree on something else, which is, broadly speaking, you're right. It should be a consistent number of voters to each councillor. As I think you're probably aware, there are some exceptions to that, even within Parliament, in various places for geographic reasons, Isle of Wight, Western Isles, etc. But the principle is right, and I think broadly speaking, we should aim for that. And I'm sure the sensible residents that are consulted on this will come back in a similar way. So, without further ado, I will just thank the Mayor for her time and listening to me rambling on, and perhaps we proceed going forward.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Thank you, everybody. I would now like to move to the vote on the proposal. All those in... Councillor Lee?
We've had an amendment. Are we now back to the substantive? Oh, I thought the motion had been amended. My apologies. I have one further question, if I'm allowed.
No. Yeah. Councillor Gordon, you have...
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So I raise a point as a motion to change the wording in point II. Can that be debated or answered at all, please?
Councillor Gordon, do you have a seconder?
Just on a point of order, my apologies. Can I just confirm where we are within the process? Because a motion was proposed by Councillor MacDonald and seconded by Councillor Ashbury. And the Constitution is that, which is essentially an amendment to the officer's recommendation. So an amendment cannot be made to an amendment. We must now vote on the amendment that was proposed. Can I just confirm where we are with the monitoring officer?
Councillor. Ms Willis is just going to clarify a couple of points for us.
Yes, just to explain. So Councillor MacDonald's motion was the original motion because the officer recommendation was never moved. So that's the original. I believe Councillor Gordon is asking to move an amendment, but I guess we're at a stage where the summing up has effectively happened. So I guess it's over to the Mayor whether or not, well, we can have a conversation about that.
Sorry, Councillor Gordon, we don't have a seconder for you. So, sorry.
Yeah, so I'd like to withdraw it then. No seconder, no support. That's fine.
Thank you.
Withdraw it.
So we're moving to the vote.
Yes, the vote.
Can I ask, has anybody requested, we need 3 people to request a recorded vote, and Councillor Wilson. Thank you. So, Miss Willis will read out your names and you will need to indicate whether you are voting in favour or against the motion or abstaining. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So as she's just said, I will read out your names in alphabetical order, and if you could indicate which way you're voting. So Councillor Alan Ashbury.
For.
Councillor Louise Ashbury. For. Councillor Cliff Betton.
For.
Councillor Johnny Cope.
Against.
Councillor Kel Finan-Cook.
For.
Councillor Lisa Finan-Cook.
For.
Councillor Sean Garrett.
Against.
Councillor Mary Glowett.
For.
Councillor Mark Gordon.
For.
Councillor Julie Hode.
For.
Councillor Dave Hoff.
For.
Councillor Nirmal Kang.
For.
Councillor Sabi Kang.
For.
Councillor Rob Lee.
For democracy.
Councillor Sean MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Emma Jane McGrath.
For.
Councillor Jacques Ormeau.
For.
Councillor David O'Mahony.
For.
Councillor Bob Rakes.
For.
Councillor Murray Rowlands. Councillor Morgan Rise.
For.
Councillor Josh Thorne.
For.
Councillor Kevin Thompson.
For.
Councillor Ying Tom Perrott.
In favour.
Councillor Victoria Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Valerie White.
Against.
Councillor Richard Wilson.
For.
Thank you, members. We have 24 votes for and 3 against, so I declare the vote carried. Members, I will remind you that we have a new procedure that was agreed earlier on this year. I would now like to invite members to ask questions of the leader. Sorry, Councillor Kang.
Point of clarification. So on the officer's recommendation, so do we now have any questions we can ask on back to the officer's recommendation?
The original office recommendation was moved, so...
The leader's recommendation became the recommendation that was voted on.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
Wheeler.
I have a question for the leader if we're there.
If there is any confusion about who should receive the question, I will ask officers to advise. As usual, so everyone can have a chance, I will try to ensure all members have an opportunity to ask a first question before I invite you to ask a second question. Please also keep your introductions to your questions as short as possible. Can I now have the first question from members? Councillor Wheeler and then Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually asking this question on behalf of a resident because it, unfortunately, due to issues with Wi-Fi, was received a little bit late to come in as a question from the public. So my question is for the leader, and it is: how is it envisaged that services and assets currently managed for residents by Surrey Heath Borough Council will be split between the new Surrey Unitary Authority and town/parish councils following the CGR/LGR? In the case where services and assets are transferred to a parish council, what funds will be made available to maintain these assets and services? And specifically, in the case of Windlesham Parish Council, which currently combines 3 villages, how will the cost be divided between residents when some villages have many assets currently managed by Surrey Heath Borough Council and some do not? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. And then Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you.
I have a question for the leader if we're there.
For.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your question on behalf of the resident, Councillor Wheeler. So we've done some work looking at this, particularly in the parish areas, and as it happens, there isn't a huge number of assets that we could consider transferring to the parishes. Okay, when you discount things like the premium parks, like water, as an example, and you discount some other complex locations, then they're actually, take for example the Sang, right? The Sang is an example where there are other factors at play which mean that it stays where it is, which would be to the unitary. So when you take out the complex ones, you're not left with a lot, to be honest. You're left with the odd park bench, bus shelter, and there are other little bits and pieces, but we've been through that exercise for the parish areas, and I think, I can't remember who on the officer side, whether it's Miss Willis or others, have been engaged with the parish, probably Miss McCubbins actually, have been engaging with the clerks then to say, well, what do you think about that? Does that make sense? Oddly enough, in the case of Windlesham, there might be a case for an asset to go the other way, which is there's a chunk of Lightwater Country Park that's actually owned by the parish, but in reality, the stewardship probably better sits with the Borough Council / Unitary. So there's a discussion to be had, does it go the other way from a biodiversity and such like. So, so that is the process that we're going through. I know it doesn't relate to your question, but I think it's important maybe for others to bear that in mind. We'll have to do the same exercise for the unparished areas because it links to the discussion we've just been having. And I would envisage that we have that discussion before the leaflet goes out so that people are very clear that, like, these are the range of assets, your top 5 in your ward, that potentially that you would be taking more ownership for locally. With respect to the funds, there isn't a huge cost that goes with those assets because, as I said, they're fairly low-level assets in the grand scheme of things. And so there isn't envisaged to be a transfer of funds as part of it. As you probably appreciate, and has been used in many other cases around the country, there is then an opportunity for the local community, and obviously on a 4-year electoral cycle, to then decide, do you want to further invest in those assets? And if you do, obviously then you put your precept up, but then you have to justify it to your residents. I think I've covered most of your points, but if there's any others, I'm happy to talk about it offline. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Rowlands, please.
Thank you, Chair. Outside where we are, in front of the library, is a knot of homeless people. It's made the regional news, but I think it's a disgrace to the council that they're there. However unneeded certain definitions of them might be, and what they say to me is that our officers know that they're there, but nobody's come down to talk to them or make effort to do something about it. And I think that in many ways this reflects our shortcomings in housing, that our sheltered accommodation was down for refurbishment, and that's been put back. We have at least well over 500 people on housing waiting lists, and there's no indication of us tackling and making a reasonable crack at developing an effective housing policy for the borough. I'm talking about the promise I heard us say in the reorganisation of our committees. We have no committee dealing with housing, which must be quite unique in local government. When it was discussed at our last meeting, the issue of housing came up. There are only, aside of course from me, there are only 2 other contributions to the discussion. And one of our principal functions is in the area of housing. We've got a huge development going to take place, some of which will be housing. So I think there's a necessity to have a look at the whole housing situation for the council. And it's really disturbing. Out there are people who, with the deteriorating climate, are in the open and not being properly housed by the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Councillor Finan-Cook Lisa Finan-Cook will respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands, for bringing the issue to the Chamber this evening. I'll speak a little bit about the support that's been offered to the people involved, and perhaps one of my colleagues might speak in terms of the housing situation we have within the borough and the challenges that we're facing. So officers have briefed me in quite a lot of detail with regard to the support that has been offered to the people. Extensive support has been offered. Numerous agencies have been involved. Officers have been in contact directly. So I would refute some of the points that you've made. I think that the officers that work in our housing department are full of heart, and they would do absolutely nothing to isolate people further when they're at their most vulnerable. So if you would like some further detail, because I don't think it would be appropriate for me to go into the nuts and bolts of the issues in the chamber. But if you would like some further detail, I'm happy to discuss that with you offline. But I do want to reassure you that plenty of support has been offered, okay? I don't know, does Councillor Ashbury perhaps want to contribute now?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the question, Councillor Rowlands. My response will be similar to the response that I've given you before in terms of under our local plan, our strategy, the plan that is currently going through examination has us at 40% affordable homes, part of which is social housing that we are looking to provide. Obviously, as we go through, we have to go through viability to look at how much can actually be provided. The other thing we have been doing is trying to work with our housing association partners to take on some of that. At the moment, they have been somewhat reluctant to engage with us, somewhat reluctant to look at building more social housing themselves within the borough, but we will continue to have that dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Everybody has the right to a safe and secure and warm home, place to call home. And I don't want anybody to think that that is not a priority for this council. It absolutely is a priority for this council. I think that it's important that we remember as we head into the cold winter periods that and the storm that I think is coming as well, that there will be additional protections put in place. It is true, though, Councillor Rowlands, that the law of the land also protects us, stops us doing various things, and that's where we rely on some of the partners, particularly for people that are not entitled to homes for whatever reason. It is unfortunately the case. But we do try and work with those, and I think, as you're aware, we support the Hope Hub, which I think has very much cross-chamber support in that initiative. What I would say is that we have had a real focus on this area, so thanks to various parties, including Councillor Garrett and others across the chamber, we've had a very strong focus on making sure that the main housing association provider is very clear about their obligations and are delivering on them, and I think we are seeing the progress there. So that's one thing. And then on the other hand, I know from the reports that went to PNF, and congratulations to Ms Burrell in the way that she handled all of the questions and queries that arose. And after she'd had those, she then got a ton more from me about various aspects to show my personal commitment to the issues in hand. And that's why I said the statement I said earlier this evening, which is 6 families potentially in bed and breakfast is 6 too many. The same way as 6 people homeless out there is too many. So we will work tirelessly across this chamber in an apolitical way to try and make sure that people get the support they need, Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Ashbury and Councillor Leeson Finan-Cook. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just a very quickie question as we're going through LGR and CGR. There's a particularly interesting anomaly, as I'm sure Democratic Services will know. I go spotting the various electoral anomalies and creation of a polling district in Frimley Green, for example, when there was an anomaly with voters not actually voting for the people that represent them. This one's slightly different. It's Water Lane in Bisley. So as you walk down Water Lane in Bisley, it's absolutely beautiful. The first few houses you pass are represented by Will Forster MP. And then you get to one house that's represented by Al Pinkerton MP. And then you walk down again, and the rest of them are all represented by Will Forster MP. I wondered, in terms of, obviously, we're looking at moving a couple of other bits and pieces around A.G. Minorca Avenue and Scottsgrove Road, whether it's worth looking at that one odd house that is on its own within Bisley Parish Council. And I appreciate it straddles constituencies, it straddles boroughs, it straddles divisions, it straddles wards, whether that is one perhaps to consider unpicking.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Well, thank you for that one, Councillor Lee. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that one, Councillor Lee. Expect the unexpected from Councillor Lee, and you get it. Yeah, as it happens, I have extensive experience of delivering in that area on my bicycle, so I probably know the houses you're talking about. As you know, those matters are not executive functions. I'm sure the officers have taken note of your concerns. We'll be happy to write to the suitable bodies, which I guess is the Boundary Commission, to see what can be done. But you are right, that is a particularly beautiful area of Bisley, and we'll call it Bisley rather than Woking.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.